Hello, everyone. My name is Xuefei Chen Song. I'm an independent media person, and I have been observing the current situation. Actually, I was a professional journalist and editor, and covering a lot about, the for example, the 2003 Iraq War, and but I have to say that I have give up the profession for some time, or for some subject, and especially about the Iraq War. I can say that the Iraq War changed my outlook of the world, or my view about the world. I felt very disappointing at that time. I think many people still remember 1999, when the NATO and the US bombing the Yugoslavia. But that time I was in Africa. I was in Zimbabwe. And in Zimbabwe, I see a lot of conflict. And so maybe I can start from there to talk about a little bit peace and war, conflict and the peaceful process. Because the world now coming to a very special time. But how did it coming to this point? In the 1990s, with the end of the Cold War, I think the whole world coming to a period that, as what Deng Xiaoping said, is peace and development. So China was concentrating on peace and on development, mainly on development. Even though we have the 1989 Tiananmen incident, that was a short time. And then since then, actually, my opinion is that incident actually promote China's fast development into a market economy. Before that, China, especially the elite university graduates, postgraduates in my generation, we are aiming to work for the government and become a civil servant and earn a stable salary. But after that, a lot of people were disappointed about the politics, and then they immediately turned to economy. And Deng Xiaoping also called on the people to do business in 1992, said that we should be bold enough to have a bigger step towards market economy. So China began to encourage the private economy, encourage the small and medium-sized enterprises, and by 1998, China's sorry, my throat is still, it's a little bit. Can I have a pause? Yeah, by 1998, actually, the Chinese private sector already hired 90% of the workers, or provided 90% of the jobs for the Chinese market. And so China, and most importantly, in 2000, they begin to lay off workers and totally smashed the state-owned, we call the iron rice bowl. So with this, but in 1998, there is a Southeast Asian financial crisis. My observation was when I was in Africa, I felt, there was a wonderful period that in Southeast Asia we call the four dragons: Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Taiwan, and the economy was very, very hot. But suddenly we have the financial crisis. Um, when Malaysia or India or Japan, all these countries, when they develop, then they tend to go to other places to invest. So they went to Africa to invest. I met quite a few like Indian business or Malaysian business or investors in Zimbabwe. I can feel that when they have money, they go to Africa and they push African economy. However, with the financial crisis in Southeast Asia, then this investment stops, and that actually give a shock in Africa too. When I was in Zimbabwe, I covered two important events. Of course, at that time, still, most news in Africa was war, famine, conflict, and this kind of thing. And typically, it was Angola. That time, Angola with President Dos Santos, and the opposition was Savimbi. Savimbi, at that time, I thought he was supported by Russia, but he was actually supported by America. So when Dos Santos was elected, and he had some seats in the parliament too, but he suddenly feel unsatisfied and decide to go back to the bush and to fight his guerrilla war again. I only remember that after several rounds of fighting, actually, he was defeated. But right now, I see the records, historical records or reports, and it said he died later in 2000 or after 2000. But I think when I was there, 1998 to 2000 already, he was somewhat also, fighting and talking and talking and fighting, fighting and talking, and just disturbed the society very much. But in the end, the government force gave a overwhelming attack against him. So in the end, he was killed in the forest and ended the long-term conflict in Angola, and Angola became a peaceful country. So Angola later showed really a better position in Africa. But I experienced another big war was the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. I just arrived there like in May 1998, and the DRC had a coup against Kabila in August already. And in August, I remember August 20, Kabila suddenly come to Zimbabwe and talk with President Mugabe, said, okay, we were attacked. We have a coup led by Rwanda officers leading the DRC soldiers. So what happened? It is like Rwanda used to support Kabila and used to train the Kabila's soldier. And so he has a lot of Rwanda officers. But this time it is these officers who just take an airplane and then just drop in Kinshasa and want to overthrow Kabila. So it's like a friend from inside just turn against you, turn the gun uh, to him. So he asked Mugabe to help. Mugabe was the uh, chief or the chairman of the SADC, South African Development Community, military and defense sectors chief. So he immediately organized a meeting called the SADC Defense Ministers Meeting. And with that meeting, they decided Zimbabwe, Angola, and Namibia jointly go to Angola to go to DRC to help, go to Kinshasa to help. And the media like AFP or other Western media report that why they participate. Number one is Mugabe. They said he has interest there. His nephew has business there. And Namibia has rebels bordering Kinshasa. And Angola, the same. Also, at the border area, has rebels. So both countries can take this chance to help Angola, help DRC. The same time, they can also press their own rebels. So with one stone to kill two birds, huh? But anyway, with this immediate action from SADC, the military was sent to DRC, and they indeed secured Kabila's life and Kabila's government. And this coup was cracked down. However, it doesn't end here, because in the vast western part of DRC, Rwanda's supported rebels actually turn against the Kinshasa. So about half of the DRC land was in uprising. And this all happened after April 9th in 1998, when Clinton visited Rwanda. According to the France AFP's news, that time, all our news source is from AFP. And the background sounds like when Clinton visited Rwanda, they encouraged the Rwanda to do something. I said, okay, DRC is too big. You can take bolder measures. So with this hint, actually, Rwanda take the action and sort of divide Kabila's DRC. Interestingly, Kabila is a rebel. Was a rebel himself, and he actually overthrown the Maputo dictatorship. Maputo government ruled for many years, also 30 years or something. That time they said he has like $50,000 saved in Belgium or in their um, their colonial country. Uh, but now this number is really so little, huh? But that time, yes, these leaders have money in the West, and their people live a very harsh life, and so there is always dissatisfaction, and then this thing now still happening, huh? But I just like to tell this history in 1998. And after this, I went to South Africa, Durban, to uh, attend the 12th Non-Aligned Movement Summit. And that was starting from August 28th to December the 6th, December the 3rd, 6th. Anyway, I was about a week in South Africa, and the first time I went myself. In Durban, at that time, it was still dangerous because people still have guns. In Africa, it's illegal to have guns. I remember I went to a Italian pizza shop, and the owner or the manager there got a gun in his leg, put the gun in the leg. And when I went out to have a dinner with another Egyptian friend, also Egyptian journalist, a colleague, and he has a friend from South Africa, white man, and he also have gun. So people have put their gun by the small leg. They bound there, and anything happened, they can take it immediately out. So the situation was not a very good. Also, those years, my Xinhua news agency colleague also get the robbers coming in, put a gun on your head, and just give big threat. And the reports about older white couples get this kind of violent insult and attack from time to time appears in the report. So what is it? It's South Africa was established in 1995, 1994, the first time they established a country when Nelson Mandela, 1994, when Nelson Mandela ended his 27 years of imprisonment. And so the revenge or violence mentality was still rampant among the Black people. But Mandela was praised by the West that he insists that there's no death penalty. So in South Africa, there's no death penalty. So even those people kill someone, they don't have a death penalty. And many people think that Mandela's vision or wisdom or humanitarian thinking. Anyway, I hope that South Africa is getting better. And South Africa at that time already quite advanced. If you go to the big cities like Durban, like Pretoria, capital, Johannesburg, and also in the southern part of the city, it's all very like the Cape of the Hope city there. It's also the Supreme Court place. I remember we live in Mount Nelson hotel. It was just magnificent, wonderful. But unfortunately, we didn't know that we should give tips there. So our bags were taken and the dollars was taken away. So I lost $200 there. But yeah, we need to learn all different rules. What I want to say is in Durban, when we have the non-aligned movement, the 12th non-aligned movement, China was an observer. China is not a member of the non-aligned movement. China has always been insisting on non-aligned movement, non-aligned policy. That is independent policy, independent foreign policy. But China also, in Mao's time, always side with the developing countries. That is Asia, Africa, and Latin America. All these developing countries, poor countries, we feel like we are all in the third world or belong to the developing country. But at that time, we're talking about the non-aligned movement, but UN Secretary General Kofi Annan attended that meeting also. So people expect a lot about the DRC conflict. Conflict always can draw people attention. And interestingly, South Africa invited Kabila to attend, but they also invite the rebels to attend the meeting. And the rebels held a press conference there too, to talk about their position. And we all thought Camila will not attend, but he attended. However, even with Kofi Annan just called on all parties to talk to each other and people talking about maybe the UN should send negotiators or peacekeeping. I think peacekeeping was much later because for 2 years when I was there, this problem was not solved yet. It's only this war create more and more and more problem. So in South Africa, that time only for the conflict only start like 10 days or a week. So there was no solution there. And that time also it coincided with the American bombing of the Afghanistan Taliban. At the same time, Clinton also announced to bomb Sudan laboratory. They call the laboratory has chemical weapons, but the Sudan side said that is just a drug factory, produce normal drugs. I remember immediately after the bombing, the CNN reporter asked the domestic minister of Sudan, said, what's your comment about this? He just shrugged off and said, oh, we Sudan, a small country, and you just bomb it, so what can I say? But in non-aligned movement meeting summit, the meeting actually formed a statement to speak on behalf of Sudan and protest against the U.S. bombing and say this is not a right decision, wrongly accused. So DRC problem was not solved then, But then the problem come to Zimbabwe. When I come back in Zimbabwe, September 6th, 5th, I came back, and September 10th was the called a donor meeting, donor conference. What does it mean? In African countries, you have a lot of these developed countries called donor countries. They every year have a meeting and decide how much money they should donate to these developing countries, and Zimbabwe is one of them. Zimbabwe at that time has also like a 23 million people, and it's like if you can donate like $500 million, it's enough for this country to live a very good life or relatively reasonably good, uh, wealthy, healthy life. People have enough to eat and drink and wear. But to be honest, at that time, the Zimbabweans government officials, their salary was higher than the Chinese colleagues. Chinese ministers didn't earn as much as their Zimbabwean minister colleagues. Um, Zimbabwean leaders has better conditions or treatment than the Chinese one. Um, but on the other hand, the majority of the African people, really the living housing is not as good because they don't have the land. And that is a land reform came to into being. Um, so September 10th, when the donors had a meeting, and they just said, okay, since Zimbabwe can send troops to Kinshasa to DRC, then we don't need to give any donation. So I remember only China donate them 5 big, we called number 55 tractor, the huge, big green tractor for agriculture but no other countries really give any donation because they said that they are against Zimbabwe to send troops to DRC. That time I analyzed why is that. And something else happened too. For example, in Lesotho is a even tiny, small land, and it is like under the protection of South Africa. So militarily, South Africa is helping for the security, and it is a kingdom. So there was a military coup in that country, and South Africa just sent 2,000 soldiers, and just a couple of hours crack down the coup and arrest them, put them in prison, and just finish that. So I would say that, you see, when you want to fire a war or you want to attack, you must be very, very powerful. Then you can involve. Otherwise, you will get stuck. So, like South Africa to send troops to Lesotho, is the power is so overwhelmed or so powerful that it's easy to fight against the rebels there or the coup military soldiers. So in that way, it's easy and short to just win. But for Zimbabwe, it didn't happen that way because DRC is very big, and even Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Angola, they all combined still they cannot cover the whole land. And so DRC was just divided into two parts for a long time. And it's difficult to really stop this. And that's why in the western part, mainly is there were also reports that in Uganda and Rwanda, even before that time, Rwanda and Uganda, they fight each other a lot. In Rwanda, they have, in Rwanda itself, Uganda is a very good example in Africa because Uganda is, with the political power, really wipe out this HIV/AIDS. So that's was set as a role model. But in Rwanda, they have this genocide called Tutsi and Hutu, two ethnic groups, and they really murder each other so fiercely, and so many people died, and nobody really care. The UN and others just simply difficult to get intervened. And so a lot of people died, and this scandal of genocide was taken and reported later, and so on. But things already passed, and the winner won all. So then this time the winner helped to get disturb the DRC, and so Zimbabwe right after this, I would say I see it very with my own experience. When I arrived in May, the Zimbabwe dollar was with the US dollar just 18, 20, like so one Zim dollar just 20, or one US dollar just 20 Zim dollar. After this war, it's $1 become 38 Zim dollar. And then as we come to the end of the year, 1990, 1998, 1999. Yeah, and then next year, 1999. At the end of the year, 1999 and 2000. So my memory was Zimbabwe's economy was almost crashed immediately. So there were rumors that they said there is no bread and so on in South Africa, and a French international radio journalist who is my friend also. We were getting along very well that time, and she came to Zimbabwe, and we have coffee together, and she I didn't see the lack of bread. Everything was quite normal. I said, yeah. So you know that the fake news is easy to spread. But Zimbabwe was bread is not a problem, but the petrol is a big problem, because the petrol you have to import it, totally import it. You must have the boat transport from the sea and then come to Zimbabwe. But then, because of these all these fake news, make people very scared, and a lot of Zimbabwe white people, they just save their money abroad, send their money to South Africa and other places. So then Zimbabwe's foreign exchange reserve just becomes zero. At that time, my salary was given in dollars, and I cannot get my salary because the bank didn't have any dollar. I have to queue there uh, to see if anybody want to save something, then I can get that money immediately. So the banker just tell me that you just come here to wait to see if anybody save the money, I will give you immediately. So one day I really went there and then just wait and then see how it goes. But there was no saving. And so in the end, of course, how did we do that? We just give a minimum dollar what we have saved, and just enough for eating and drinking, and then the rest of the dollar saved in the, at home in Beijing. So that's how we solve the problem. And then so Zimbabwe's economy was affected, and politically, just because of the Mugabe's action to take this initiative themselves without consulting anybody else or without yeah, so this action was actually it's offensive against the West. So he got nobody really support him. So England, US, nobody support him, and only stopped any donation to him. So this makes Zimbabwe very, very difficult. And then it happened. You see, this Kenya, Tanzania U.S. embassy was attacked by terrorists, and Zimbabwe's American embassy also was very scared. So they put a huge, huge cement pole in front of their embassy, so to prevent the how can I say the suicide bombing. And then Mugabe think of the land reform. Actually, the donor conference was also about the land reform. So Mugabe want to have a land reform to confiscate some, not confiscate, but buy the white farmers' land in order to give it to the black people. And but you have to give compensation, right? You have to give money to the white farmers. You cannot just confiscate it, because there were laws and contracts, since 1936, the Zimbabwe has taken the law called the land law, which is guarantee the private property is guaranteed by the law. You cannot just confiscate it. In the 60s, when Zimbabwe got independent from the colonial master England, also they have this land law. 1980, when they have the overthrown the white power, and Mugabe take over the power, take over the country, they have some kind of oral agreements in London. John Major was the prime minister in England, and Mugabe said they promised that when they have land reform, they should give a donation. But English said, "Oh, that's a long time ago. We don't remember anything," and so there was no donation for this land reform. And so Mugabe have to do the work, and we actually was really covering this in that time. And I tell you one experience I can never forget in my life. That is, we take a transport airplane. That you just do that way and then just fly. And we open the cabin, and so that the journalists, Zimbabwe journalists, just shooting on the iron land the Africans have. Um, and we just participate that, but I totally give up because my stomach was turned upside down. I couldn't do anything. I was just sick, sick, and sick. When we landed, I just lie down on the floor immediately, and not on the floor, but on a bench, and I just cannot. Oh my God, my balance capability was too bad. So I they gave us a chicken leg and a hamburger, but I eat it, but then I vomit all, and I feel like I even want to vomit my stomach out. It was just completely horrible feeling, and to just sit on an open airplane is very very noisy and very difficult. So in my life, I really don't like to sit an airplane or take a boat. People say, "Oh, we go to have a boat trip." Oh, I always have nightmare for this. But anyway, we know that how barren the Africans land because in Africa it's like this. Zimbabwe was called the storehouse of the grain or food, 粮仓, storehouse of food for Africa. Uh, Indeed, they have very good land and they have good farmers, and mostly white farmers, really British descendants. And each farmer has a huge land, and this land they can raise like 1,000 villagers. And the whites establish schools and provide jobs for these black people. And usually a farm is worthwhile only because there's a lake beside that. If there's no lake, then it's difficult. They use the Israeli, dripping equipment, so pipelines to water. The main thing is tobacco they produce and some wheat also. We have visited tobacco farmlands together with People's Daily colleague. And so some farmers are very good. For example, the one we interviewed, he has 1,000 villagers to take care of and provide them with food and jobs and schools, and quite good. But some farmers, they didn't do very well. And so some farmers was unsatisfied with them. And during that land reform, they revenge on them. Also, that's why they have the accident that one white farmer was killed and accident, and the British was very angry about it. Also, that some or majority of the black people, they just don't have any land, and they just have a backyard or front yard, a small, very barren land, and they cannot survive very well with that. So I think Mugabe's land reform was right, but he has to, if he didn't participate in this DRC war, likely he got some donation, and with the donation, you can give a compensation to the white farmers. Then the land reform is in a good process. But this DRC has conflict, and Kabila was in danger, and he was trying to help, then it's not okay. See, so he was punished by doing this in some sense. Later in 1999, the US bombed Yugoslavia, and Mugabe was also actually denounced or condemned the US action, especially bombing the Chinese embassy. And I asked him, and so what's his comment? And he said, yeah, this is illegal against the international law. That time he just came back from Cuba, and he was uh, talking with the farmers. And the veterans, Zimbabwe veterans, are a lot of them are the soldiers who used to fight with him. Mugabe, since 1960s, began to fight with the white power or white government. It's interesting, actually. I think in Zimbabwe, I met the Ian Smith, the former prime minister, also, and he wrote a book about his experience in Zimbabwe. And I read that book, and I can understand that for Mugabe, for Africans, they think, the Ian Smith is British, and he's supported by British. He is uh, British descendants, British brothers, and so on and so on. But if you talk with Ian Smith, he will say, no, we are Zimbabweans. We are only white, but we are Zimbabweans. We have a cut-off relation with our forefathers in England. We established Zimbabwe, used to call the Southern Rhodesia. So they get independent. So you cannot ask money from London to compensate this and that. So the Zimbabwe white used to actually in 1980 they built a very good government, and 20% of the parliament members are the white. And even in 1998, the minister of health is a white man, and in the legal sector, also there are white members. The Black brothers are very good tennis players. So Zimbabwe whites play a very important role in Zimbabwe. It's not all the Black people. So it's actually the white are also quite constructed there, and they build Zimbabwe. For example, Harare is just like a garden city, the same as Brighton or suburbs of London. Was very beautiful. I was so impressed. Their streets from the first street to the eighth street. Every street has different flowers, different color of flowers. Extremely beautiful, and the trees are all hundreds years. And flower trees is just extremely beautiful. All kinds of roses. They have blue, yellow, um, pink, and red. It's absolutely. In England, you buy one rose. In Zimbabwe, you buy a big bucket, a big basket of roses. It's just that's the purchasing power is much more. And so I think Zimbabwe is in a way complicated. And so so for that 2 years, I think it's just the economy was worse and worse, and conflict with the West is also. Later, 2004, when I went to New Zealand, I heard the New Zealanders even talk about Mugabe and said, "What can we do with this dictator? And how can we do that? We should expel it from the Commonwealth." In fact, the Commonwealth meeting was held in 1999, and my colleague went there to participate at Commonwealth meeting, also in Durban. Um, but by 2004, they expelled, and Mugabe just make a speech and said bye bye or farewell to Commonwealth. So it's yeah, just this conflict or contradiction is continuing. But the key, what is the key? The key is Mugabe try to when to have the election, he was re-elected again, and the opposition said uh, he was has rigged the. Actually, he also just take different measures. I think he was very confident at the beginning, and he make a referendum. But unfortunately, that referendum he didn't do very well the homework or mobilization. So the referendum failed him, and that made him very disappointing. And since then, he began to take measures like, for example, the Zimbabwe whites all have double passports, Zimbabwean English, and he just say you have to choose. If you don't have the, if you uh, have the British passport, then you should not be account as the Zimbabweans. So yeah, whatever different measures, in the end he won the election, and he continued to be the president. And that time was also interesting. I At the beginning I think he was quite nice. For example, before he went to China, to Kunming, to attend horticulture expo, he actually, the Zimbabwe media just sarcastic about him to have a say he go to China to ask for money or ask China to have a donation or loans. Um, and during that press conference, there was a young man even asking him, hey, Prime President Mugabe, when are you going to step down? When are you going to resign? I was so surprised because I think this kind of question will be impossible to, to be asked in some countries. But they just asked like that. And then, you know what he said? He said, you young people you should work harder. One day, I know when I will go. And if you are all very capable and can take the responsibility, I will go. I know when I begin and I know when I stop. But even he said so, he actually later on he make the system like there is a symbolic president, and he was president, and the compromise was the former trade union leader who became a prime minister for many years, and yeah, so Mugabe hold the position until he dies. What I want to say is, in this world, really, we are still, in a way, the laws are not very well observed and or obeyed. Sometimes people still think, like what American said, you should speak with the strength. Whoever have a power, superpower, then speak louder. And those who don't have the power, you better just listen. We want to have a better rule-based and law-obeyed international order or international system. But unfortunately, still, some countries are still against this, and still they just want to speak with their power. As long as they have power, they just do whatever they want and violate the rights of the others. So that's the unfortunate of this world. And I think we have to try to avoid this situation. And the most important thing, I think, is to avoid the suffering of the people, avoid the humanitarian disaster, avoid the expansion of war. So it's better we diminish or circumvent the war in a smaller scale. And in the morning, when I see the map from the Swedish newspaper, the DN, you can see that right now, Russia, orally they said they want to go back to 1997 or 2014 and so on, so on. And many Europeans worry that they will do more. But you can see right now they are just along the border between Ukraine and Russia. So I think Russia's concern or their worries really exist, and they likely like to build a wall, like a great wall, a great wall. So they want to build a wall for them to be secure. So they mainly want to secure the border with the Ukraine and make peace there. And but unfortunately, this wall is built by the wall, the real wall. So I hope that this war should end there and should end as soon as possible. And you want to sort of smash the Russia is also not very pragmatic. I think Europe, as pragmatic is, we should let it stop there and sit down and talk. And yeah, it's better not to extend the warfare. Then more people will suffer. What is our future? What do we wish? We have to think. What's the future? If you always have the fire and put oil in the fire, doesn't work. And I think Russia should also just stop where you are. Don't just take further action, or even take the initiative to go back to the table, peace talking table. And if you, because you started, and if you stop it, then no one can stop you, because of course what everybody is doing is just try to stop you. And if you just stop, then you are welcome. Okay, thanks for listening and watching, and I will try to improve my broadcasting, because now my throat is still, just after the COVID, is still very tiresome. Yeah, I hope that next time I will do it better and better. Thank you for listening and watching.